What are some very creepy facts? One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. That's actually pretty neat. I'd like to subscribe to Crow Facts, thanks. Crocodiles can gallop like a horse. I don't like knowing this, so I am cursing you people with this knowledge as well. Fortunately alligators cannot. So that's how you tell them apart. Yeah, but now I'm confused how to tell a horse and crocodile apart. Most people smell different when they're awake. That's my favorite thing to whisper. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Is she ready to go to the embalmers? No, she's still pretty exy. Well, that escalated quickly. If Reddit has taught me anything, it's that necrophilia is inevitable. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. As a fish, there isn't a cure and it sucks. I keep saying stuff I don't mean to say. Like talking head. Mount Everest is covered in frozen corpses because removing them is very unsafe and time consuming. They are easily viewed from the climbing routes and some are used as trail markers. What's odd is that although the bodies are prominent, in some cases there is no consensus on their identity. Like over the years, two different people with a similar description didn't return from their Everest climb, and we know the body is probably one of them, but not sure which. Or is it more creepy that some of the bodies are indeed identified, and somewhere out there is a family who knows full well that their loved one's remains are a landmark on the world's most famous mountain? There have been rare occasions where the family pays to have the body brought down, but it's incredibly expensive, tens of thousands of dollars, and extremely dangerous, and so it's rarely been done. But how much would it cost if I want my body brought up to my Everest to be a trail marker? Discluding incurred travel costs, most guides charge around $40k. But you could always just try to go up yourself for free. You'll just be a really low marker. After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no antivenin and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. Cone snails are pretty freaky. Some of the most deadly ones can kill you in 30 minutes or less after they sting you. Their shells are super pretty too, so any beachcomber should be aware of these creatures and know how to pick up a shell carefully just in case someone might still be inside. Today I learned there are killer snails. People don't take their antimalarial drugs when they travel, because they hear bad stories about the side effects and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. The truth is, populations native to malaria endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst effects. Also, most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the antimalarials, getting it is so much worse. I, fortunately, have never had it, but I study it as part of my work and people have told me about having it and they all say the same thing. It is so awful you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours, and each cycle is agonizing and brings you the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you. Sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that, even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system and can come back at any time. We lost our anti-malarial drugs for a period of 2 weeks when we visited India about 20 years ago. I was hospitalized with malaria 9 months after we came back. A black mamba is the fastest snake which can slither at a speed of 12.5 miles an hour, 20 km/h. They have neurotoxins which are fast acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, There is an almost 100% kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. When I went on a safari, the guide had no problem driving by the family of lions, cougars, crazy hippos, everything else we saw. However, when he spotted a black mamba, this incredible fear came over his face. The snake was right in the middle of the dirt road and he wouldn't even drive past it. We were in one of those open Jeep safari things. The guide was so frightened that he just zoomed in reverse and got away so quickly. He said they can jump up in the car and do all kinds of crazy things. I don't know if that's true, but I know that he was genuinely afraid and we got out of that area so fast. Yeah, I read a book a long time ago talking that mentioned mambas and it described that they'd sit still and straight so that from a distance they look like a stick or something. Also in older safari jeeps that were pretty open it was possible to hit one on the road and a pissed off mamba flung up into the cabin into your lap. Also green mambas are fast as frick too. I saw Snake Keeper who survived a green mamba bite describe how he didn't see the snake bite him and only felt the effects after closing the cage. Men who are hanged get a death erection, known as rigor erectus. Pretty awkward for the family, I assume. This is the one time I'd advocate using hung instead of hanged. They said you were hung. And they were right. Serial killer Richard Chase took any unlocked door as an invitation to come inside. If I recall correctly, he thought he was a vampire. This is also not the worst fact about this case. He was severely mentally ill and thought he didn't have enough blood. His solution was to drink blood. So didn't quite think he was a vampire, but close enough. Ugh. My mum never locks her door and she leaves alone. Way back in the woods. If you begin to display symptoms of rabies you will go crazy and die. There's no cure. Your brain will slowly melt until you're dead. The second you get bitten by anything you should literally speed to the hospital. Cockroaches have been recorded eating human flesh, both living and dead, as well as fingernails, eyelashes, feet, and hands. The American cockroach and German cockroach are more likely to bite humans than other species. Pretty sure Australian cockroaches do something equally creepy, but as an Australian who plans to sleep at some point in the future, I'm not going to Google it. Blobfish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish. It has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. It was once discovered that a fir tree was growing inside a human body. Artem Sidorkin went to the doctors suspecting something wrong with his lungs. The doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but turns out he had inhaled a fir tree seed which had sprouted and had begun growing in his lungs. He also had a watermelon and a gum tree in there. He had his belly button stapled shut cause he unknotted it as a kid. Ducks become cannibals due to boredom, of all fricking reasons. They can only be stopped by cutting off their mouths. Don't frick with ducks. Quack is whack. It's finally my moment. After seeing your comment, I googled this. Pro tip. Don't Google this. I went against your advice and googled, subsequently came across this gem of advice. Bill trimming using commercial grade, heated cauterizing blade should be performed only by a competent operator. Man. Something about that disclaimer really makes me wonder just how many veterinarians were called due to botched bill amputations that made the warning necessary. There was a speech made for Apollo 11 if they were to die on the moon. Side fact, if it were to happen, people would look up at the moon knowing that crew died there, and their bodies would rest there till the end of time. Not forgetting that the ocean is somewhat like this. Many people died there too, at the very depths of the sea. Also, their bodies would not have decomposed, because the moon has no oxygen. Instead they would become mummies. If you live to age 70 you will have shed around 105 pounds of skin. Cool. At least there's one thing to look forward to when I'm 70. Can't wait to freak everyone out when it happens. Make sure to have a huge party and give a speech right before it happens, like Bilbo before he put on the ring to freak everyone out. In the US, if someone is kidnapped and not found within about a day, then there is a 97% chance the kidnapped person is dead. And 3/4 of them are killed within the first 3 hours of their abduction. That's why it's so important to go the police right away, and for the cops to actually act immediately, instead of waiting 24, 48, 72 hours.